Hey everyone, James from TDB here, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today I am going to be talking about figuring out your preferences in Pour and how that is one of the most important things that you can do, especially if you are just starting out. So I guess this episode is going to be a little bit more geared towards drinkers that are just getting into Pour or are just getting started maybe within like the first year of discovering Pour and deciding it's something you want to explore more. So Pour, more than other types of teas, I think people really can fall in love with certain ideas and concepts around it, more so than even the tea itself. For instance, a lot of people, and I can sort of relate to this, can fall in love with like the idea of aging tea without regards to even if they like aged shung. So as well as people can really sort of like love and fall in love with the idea of chachi, something that I think really shouldn't be at the foremost of like any beginners looking at Pour. I'm sure some people will disagree with that, but that is my personal view as far as chachi and that stuff goes. And so one danger of like sort of recognizing Pour as something that can be aged and stuff like that and falling in love with that idea is you could start to buy and overbuy Pour, intending to age it without really knowing what aged shung is like, and if you even like it. I think this is more common than you realize, partly because the market is just really, really saturated with a lot of young shung, depending on which vendor you go to. Of course, you can find more aged examples, but if you look at what vendors, the most prolific vendors are releasing, it tends to be very, very sort of young shung dominant or ripe dominant. And so that is one type of tea within raw Pour, and it definitely doesn't speak towards whether you're going to like it when the tea is actually aged. So as a result of sort of like this aging fascination too, it's really, really easy way to rationalize overbuying, which includes quantity, but you could also oversample. There are a ton of Pours out there, and people really, really want to try them. So I think patience is very, very important when it comes to this. The Pour has been sold online for a long time now. Yunnan Sourcing started selling on eBay in 2004. The market's not going to change overnight. You can be patient in how you approach this. The Pour market, yes, it has changed over time, but I think in general it's better to be prudent and patient and to be slower, especially when you're just getting started, rather than just going out and buying absolutely everything, whether that's a sample or a cake or anything like that. In regards to oversampling, we do have just sort of a certain capacity for tea. I think having samples lying around, I think the purpose of samples is to drink the tea and try them. Having samples lie around for years and years, something that I have been guilty of in the past, but I'm trying to, I have constantly tried to sort of drink those down and give them away, especially over the past 5 years or so. It's really easy to do. But I think if people go in with the intention of, these are my samples, if I don't drink them or whatever in a year or something, I'm going to give them away. I think something like that could be very, very healthy. As time passes on, those samples are also going to diverge from what the actual tea tastes like. So you're going to be more, you can get some idea of the tea, but it's going to be fairly different. For instance, like if you had a sample of 2021 or 2016 shung, and I had it in 2016 and just left it around, the cake, whether it's stored in Guangzhou or Kunming or whatever, is going to taste pretty different if you're trying that same sample in 2021. Okay, so another thing with raw Pour in particular, age really does increase the variation on taste too. There's a lot of different types of storage and stuff out there. It's very likely that you're going to have some preference. So trying different types of aged shung, which I think vary a lot more than young shung, I think is really, really important. So learning whether you like Taiwan storage or Kunming storage, and just learning how to group those together. Like Taiwan is obviously more similar to Guangzhou storage, and Kunming might be more similar to Western storage. So you're going to learn stuff about how you think you should store Pour too, and you're going to learn what you prefer and if that's something that you think you can get through your own storage. So I did a video maybe about a year ago, maybe under a year, about just like the 5 different types of pu'er everyone should try when they're just sort of starting out. Highly recommend people check that video out, and it just talks about the different types of raw pu'er and what they should seek out specifically in terms of trying it. Okay, yeah, so I mean, knowing what you're after as far as aging is very important. And I think these things are all sort of, they're just important to figure out what your preferences are and really help you to determine what sort of like the trajectory and what you're after. I think for some people, especially those that end up just liking young sheng, that's fine. But there's really no reason to buy a ton of tea or anything like that if you don't care for aged tea. Another scenario, a very realistic one, is like you just determine that storage is not going to be worth it and you prefer Taiwan Guangzhou storage, and you don't want to go through the hassle of that. So you can end up in a much healthier buying space rather than sort of accumulating all of this tea that you're going to be storing in a way that you actually don't care for it. Okay, so I guess in terms of practical advice, it's good to have an idea of types of tea to try. So recommend that video of sort of like 5 types to try if you're just starting out. Make sure to try them all. Get multiple repetitions of teas, so maybe try 3 to 5 different teas a couple times each, but you don't need to do too many. I struggle to find a reason that you would need to buy 100 samples of semi-aged raw if you're just trying to figure out what you like. Try some. If you like it, then you might have a better idea of what to buy more. But there's no reason to go just dive right into the most extreme. Be patient. Pu'er has been around. As I said, Yunnan Sourcing started selling it in 2004. Market's not going to change overnight. You can take your time. Stuff will sell out, but for the most part, there's very, very suitable replacements for most tea on the market. And if you're just starting out, you're not going to know what is going to be like the tea that isn't going to be available later on. So, it's okay to buy a cake or 2 here or there, but I think for the most part, sampling and being very patient and just figuring out your own preferences is a much healthier way to go. And also be sure not to overread. So if you end up just trying one sample once, or you try in like a group context, like a more aged sheng, and you're like, oh, I just don't like that. Don't overread into that. Make sure you're getting multiple repetitions from different storages and stuff like that. So I think, I think you can sample too much, and I think you can sample too little. And especially for tea categories that are a little more scarce and harder to find, I think people really do run the danger of sampling too little. So stuff like traditionally stored raw, things like that, or like if you're just stuck on the young pu'er train and you just try 1 or 2 samples of something that's like more Taiwan or Guangzhou stored, there's a lot of variation even within those like sort of 5 basic categories. So definitely recommend people get multiple repetitions of them too. So let me know how you like this video. Check out that other video on 5 types of raw pu'er to try, and I will see you all next time. Cheers.